You're about to hear one of the most important and, frankly, one of the weirdest stories in legal history. It's a story about a simple bottle of ginger beer, let's just say, an unwelcome surprise inside, and how this bizarre combination completely reshaped the world we live in today.
But let me start by asking you a question. Imagine a friend buys you a drink at a cafe. You take a sip, and it turns out there's something wrong with it. It makes you really sick. Now, you can't sue the cafe, right? Because you didn't buy it. And you probably can't sue the company that made it because you don't have a contract with them. So, are you just out of luck? Well, this exact dilemma is what a woman in Scotland faced almost 100 years ago.
And that exact problem, that legal catch-22, is right at the heart of our story. It all kicks off in a little cafe on what seemed like a totally normal Sunday night.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The date is August 26, 1928. A woman named May Donahue is at the Wellmeadow Cafe in Paisley, Scotland. Her friend treats her to an ice cream float made with ginger beer from a local manufacturer, a guy named David Stevenson. Sounds pretty nice, right? Just a casual evening out.
But here's the crucial detail, the kind of thing you wouldn't even think twice about. The bottle of ginger beer was made of this dark, opaque glass. You couldn't see through it. So nobody, not May, not her friend, not even the person who owned the cafe, had any idea what was inside. Everyone was just trusting that the manufacturer did their job right. So Mrs. Donahue has some of her float. It's fine. But then her friend goes to pour the rest of the ginger beer into her glass, and out plops the decomposed remains of a snail. I know, it's disgusting. Mrs. Donahue was horrified, and she later said she suffered from severe stomach problems and shock. And this moment right here was the start of her long fight for justice.
But that fight almost ended before it began. She immediately slammed into a huge legal wall, a rule that made her case look, well, completely impossible.
That wall was a legal idea called privity of contract. And here's what it means in plain English. You can only sue someone if you have a direct contract with them. Think about it. Mrs. Donahue didn't buy the drink. Her friend did, so no contract with the cafe. And she definitely didn't have a contract with Mr. Stevenson, the guy bottling the ginger beer miles away. According to the law back then, he owed her absolutely nothing.
And if you want to know just how hopeless her situation looked, get this. Just 1 year before, there was a nearly identical case. Seriously, it involved 2 dead mice found in a ginger beer bottle. And that case failed. It failed for the exact same reason, no contract. So the precedent was crystal clear, and it was telling May Donahue she was going to lose.
But despite the terrible odds, her lawyers didn't give up. They decided to appeal, taking her fight all the way to the highest court in the entire country, the House of Lords. And this is where the story takes a truly revolutionary turn.
Her journey there was a total roller coaster. First, she actually won in the initial court. But then the manufacturer, Stevenson, appealed that decision, and she lost. Her last, final shot was the House of Lords in London, and the only reason she could even afford this was because she was granted pauper status, which meant her legal team had to work for free. Talk about an underdog. And even when she got there, to the highest court in the land, the 5 judges were completely split. This was not a slam dunk. The entire future of negligence law was hanging in the balance, and it all came down to a nail-biting, razor-thin 3-2 vote. And then came the moment that changed everything. One of the judges in that tiny majority, a man named Lord Atkin, came up with a new way of looking at the problem. He asked a simple question: who in law is my neighbor? And his answer created what's now famously called the neighbor principle. He said your neighbor isn't just the person who lives next door. It's anyone who is so closely and directly affected by what you do that you should be thinking about them when you act.
Lord Atkin's simple idea gave birth to a massive new legal concept, the duty of care. Basically, the court ruled that a manufacturer does owe a duty to the final person who consumes their product, whether there's a contract or not. In the eyes of the law, Mr. Stevenson's neighbor was indeed Mrs. Donahue.
Now, it's really important to get this straight. The House of Lords didn't actually decide if there was a snail in the bottle. All they decided was that Mrs. Donahue had the right to sue in the first place. But that principle they established, it sent ripples across the legal world that are still spreading today.
So why should you care about a snail from 1928? Because that duty of care is now the absolute foundation of our modern laws on negligence. It's the reason companies have to make sure their products are safe. It's why a doctor is responsible for the advice they give you. It's why drivers on the road have a duty to not crash into each other. It touches almost every single part of our society.
What's really profound about this case is how it changed legal thinking itself. The law wasn't just about following old, rigid rules anymore. This case showed that the law could be guided by a broad common sense idea, that we all have a basic responsibility not to harm other people through our carelessness.
So, Mae Donahue won her big legal battle. The law was changed forever. Case closed, right? Well, not quite. Our story has one last, pretty shocking twist.
See, remember how the big court only decided on the legal principle? The case was supposed to go back to Scotland for an actual trial to prove the facts, to prove there really was a snail in the bottle. But before that trial could ever happen, David Stevenson, the manufacturer, died.
With Stevenson gone, there was no one left to put on trial. So his estate decided to just settle with Mae Donahue out of court. And after all that, for a case that would change the world, she received £200. And here it is, the ultimate irony. Years later, another judge was giving a speech and made a joke. He said it was eventually found that there never was a snail in the bottle at all. Now, he was actually mistaken. That trial never happened, so nothing was ever found. But he accidentally stumbled onto a bizarre truth. Because the case was settled, the existence of that snail was never ever proven in a court of law.
And that contrast is just incredible, isn't it? On one side, you have the facts of the case, a small, personal argument that fizzled out with a quiet settlement and was never actually proven. And on the other side, you have the principle it created, a huge, universal idea of responsibility that became a pillar of modern law all around the world.
Which leaves us with one last mind-bending question to chew on. The most famous snail in history might not have even existed. It could have just been a legal fiction. But the world-changing law that it spawned is undeniably real. So if the story that started it all is a mystery, does that make the powerful legal idea built on top of it any less value? Something to think about.